Hi, everyone. My name is Shion Desharkar.
And I'm Amanda Phillips.
The two of us work at Blue Squad, where our mission is to build a more lasting, progressive society. If you're watching this episode, you probably know about our app, which helps you find the easiest and most impactful ways to engage in progressive activism.
And what you probably don't know is how much thought, research, and experimentation goes into what's available in the app. Cheyenne just alluded to this, but our mission is not just to build a mobile app for political campaigns. Our mission is to build a more lasting progressive society. To put it another way, we don't want it to just be easier for you to text your friends about a political campaign. We want to find a way to unlock the inner activists in everybody.
Yeah, totally. So that is a really tall order. You may not think it's even possible. We think it is. So we're going to try, which brings us back to the show that we're doing here. We want to take everyone on the same journey we're going through, an exploration of what it means to be progressive, how someone goes from apathy to activism, and honestly, anything and everything it will take to build a better society. It's going to be a lot. Along the way, we hope to talk to notable community leaders, thought leaders, just leaders in general.
And not just leaders, but also the people who are involved, like the everyday activists doing work, the person who's sitting at home thinking, what can I do? We'll even be talking with people who are in the process of becoming activists and learning what each of those journeys look like.
Through it all, we hope that it's not just us that's learning, but everyone who tunes into this show. If you like what you hear, let us know. If you feel we could be doing more, let us know that too.
Yes, we're all learning and growing together, and we're all going to build this progressive society as a whole. Jump on the train. We're going.
Okay, so we are recording this episode on June 4th, 2020. For the last week, Americans have been protesting not just the tragic deaths of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and countless other Black men, women, and children, but also the systemic racism purposefully built into the very fabric of this country. So this may seem like a pretty inopportune time to start a new web series, but in fact, I feel that the underlying issues that have culminated into recent events overlap considerably with the issues we're hoping to explore on this show.
We did have a conversation internally as a team with launching the show and how neither one of us are Black, and so we can't speak to the Black American experience. And so we've decided to treat this show not as the first episode, but as the 0th episode. And it's more of a preview of what we have in store. And so we can work out everything technical and make sure that we're doing things the way that we should be. And yeah, just kind of get our dip our toe in so we can come in at the first episode and really nail it.
Yeah. And honestly, we're both novices at this whole YouTube thing. So episode 0 is definitely a soft opening. It's going to be raw. We might just burn the tape afterward.
Yes. Can we burn the tape if it's on the internet?
We've got some pretty smart people on the team. We can probably figure out something. So since this is episode 0, like I said, we don't have a guest to learn from, but we're going to try and learn from each other. So we're going to kind of bare our souls to each other. We're going to talk about individual and shared experiences before and during Blue Squad. So it's going to be fun, hopefully, or it might be terrible. We'll see. So yeah, I think let's get started here. So even though we're talking to each other and just kind of testing the waters here, as it turns out, for those listening, Amanda, I think, actually has a ton of interesting experience coming into her role as community manager at Blue Squad. So I want to just I know some of the stories. I want to learn more about them. And I think hopefully And of course, Amanda can strike back at me with things she wants to learn about me. And so hopefully, like if we show people that we can be open and honest, then our future guests will be comfortable doing the same thing. Hopefully. So, are you ready, Amanda?
Yes, I'm ready.
So yeah, tell me about life before joining the Blue Squad team. Like how, if you can like look back to your very first moment of like activism of like, I want to do something. What is that moment?
Oh man. Okay. In pre-K, and this is a serious story.
Okay.
And when I was born here in Austin. I went to pre-K in Austin for like the first 5 years of my life. And I had this best friend, Ashley, and we were just like this, just the best of friends. And one day she like drew me a picture. And I loved it. I was like, thank you so much. This is beautiful. And this boy came over and grabbed it and he threw it in the trash. And I went and I got it out of the trash. I smoothed it out and I put it back on my little desk. And he came back and he grabbed that piece of paper and he threw it away again. So I went and I grabbed it out of the trash and he was approaching me to try to throw it away again. And so I punched him.
Okay.
I punched him and there was a scuffle and it ended when I bit him in the arm. And we both went to the principal's office and I did not get in trouble because I was protecting my friend and her feelings and this beautiful drawing. And that's very far back. That's like,
was this like the principal or?
Yeah, like the headmaster or whatever, the office of, they like sent us to the office for fighting. And then like, I got to like tell what happened. And, I was just, that big. And so I was like crying and like
I feel like that headmaster, like, I don't know, they must have, I feel like it's unusual for someone to like, be like, you did the right thing there. Like I feel like they deserve something for recognizing what happened.
It was a really cool school. They now have like a water slide and stuff outside, like an indoor playground and everything. Shout out Country Home. Yeah, that was, I don't think you were expecting me to go that far back, but like that's
No.
like one of my first memories. And that I honestly like that was like a turning point for me. And it was kind of like a moment where I was like, that felt really good. And also like I didn't even get in trouble and like maybe I was like doing the right thing. And yeah, I obviously like I've made mistakes since then. Like I haven't always like been that I haven't always fought the good fight, I would say. But yeah, I think about that moment every once in a while and I'm like, geez, like that was pretty cool of me. Like go little 4-year-old Amanda.
Is that like, if you're 4 years old, like that must have been like one of your earliest memories too. Like not just.
Yeah. My first earliest memory is when like I had a dream that a bunch of spiders ran under my bed and I woke up screaming and then my parents looked under my bed and there was a spider. So my first memory is me being psychic. And then my second one is me being a badass.
That's pretty awesome. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, but I do like obviously like a lot more years have happened since then and I've stayed involved in various ways. I would say like I really got into activism when I was about 20 years old and I was pregnant. I was working at this job that was paying me $500 a month, like to live on. This was in like 2016. So no, it's not a livable wage.
Yeah.
And I was really focused on finding what I wanted to do with my life and like what was I passionate about? Like what did I want to build a career in? And I was working at a co-working space. And so I was around like a lot of startups and entrepreneurs and people who were just like, build your own thing, just go out and do it. And my ex was also an entrepreneur. And so he convinced me to apply to ATX Hack for Change, which is a hackathon here in Austin. I'm not sure if it's still going on, but it was all about you bring either an idea that you want to build that would, help the world and specifically Austin, or you like bring your expertise to help make that a reality. And so I applied, I was accepted. It was very easy to get accepted. And I stood up in front of, 200, 300 people in this auditorium, like 8.5 months pregnant, just like giant belly. And I told them about this idea I had for building an app on the web. I'm not sure if it was the app. It was like a website called ATX Votes, and it would be geared towards giving people nonpartisan information about local elections that are happening, the candidates who are running for it, and just kind of like build like a hyper local tool that people can use, like kind of similar to what League of Women Voters does.
Just thinking
And
that.
honestly, like what Blue Squad does, like it feels like Blue Squad is like just the big brother of this startup that I was like trying to get off the ground. And that what is it? So for about a month, I was like actively working on it. I had like a team of 5 people who like stuck with me for about a month, like working on this and helping flesh it out. And then I gave birth. And I actually, 3 days after I gave birth, I went to an Open Austin meeting to talk about ATX votes and try to see how we could work together and get information. And I was delirious. I was like sweaty and like they gave me like some pain pills because I had just birthed a human. And so I decided to go like last minute. I was like, yes, I will go do it. And so like I drove to this meeting. I was there for an hour. I drove back home and I was just like so exhausted and tired. And my ex, I walked into the house and my baby was screaming. I was breastfeeding at the time. And so like, I felt like just a fat cow. Like I was like in extreme pain. And I was just like, I can't do that again. Like I have to take time off. I have to give my body a break and I have to like raise this child. And so I put the project on hold and eventually it just stayed on hold. And I mean, I don't think I have access to that website anymore. And yeah, it really kind of like disappeared for a while. And then I became a VDR and I started registering people to vote and kind of getting back into the swing of things while building my own career in media and marketing and trying to like flesh out. I really just like getting a whole lot of experience that would eventually lead me here.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I want to dive into a few things there. But so guys, ATX votes. So like one of the things that I often think about at Blue Squad is how we're going to build like a sustainable business around activism, because a lot of how if we like think of this like activism market or industry, right? If that, I know that sounds weird to say, but there is one, right? It's often based on like donations and charitable giving, that kind of stuff. And part of me is always conflicted about like how to make that a sustainable thing, right? Because you're kind of tapping in often into the same people, the same pocketbooks, and in many cases you're not actually kind of generating revenue for yourself. And I mean, we could go into the sort of conflicts of interest, access to politics or buying for access to politics kind of thing and kind of stuff. I won't go into all that, but I was just curious, like if y'all, when you were doing that, did you think about, is this like a business or is this like a, more like an effort and initiative or something like, I don't know how to call it, but something like that.
Yeah, as far as like making money off of it, that like I had no idea how to do that. And I think my goal was to eventually have it be adopted by the city of Austin. And yeah, so what I wanted to do was build a tool that was so good and so helpful and useful to people that the city of Austin would just kind of take it as their own, and hopefully like even like assign someone in the Capitol to help out and like add information to it to keep it running. Yeah, so my goal was very um I didn't think about making money at the time. Yeah, again, like I was making $500 a month at the time, so like I was very like, oh, money, whatever, like it doesn't matter at all. And yeah, I think my goal was eventually just to make it so good and powerful and helpful to people that they would just lean on that.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so becoming a VDR, tell me some of your experiences with that. I think so. Maybe probably a lot of people listening to this episode, being the 0th episode, probably know what a VDR is. But for our friends, so we have a lot of people in Blue Squad who are new to activism. They may not know what a VDR is, especially if they're not in Texas. So tell us what a VDR is to start.
A VDR, is a volunteer deputy registrar. And they are people who can register people to vote, because we live in Texas and every system, especially when it relates to voting, is ancient and seems useless maybe. And honestly, like it kind of is. Like Texas is one of the few states who still requires like a VDR to help you register to vote. Like I know you can do it at the DMV, and I think when you like change your name and get married, they're like, oh, do you want to register to vote? And you could just check a box and it's done. But if you're not,
there's some questions if that actually happens all the time, I think. But
I really.
I don't know if that's still the case. There was an issue where where they were avoiding that. But yeah. Anyways, we'll make sure that was happening.
That doesn't surprise me at all. Like, I mean, even with VDRs, so as a VDR, to become a VDR, you have to attend an hour-long meeting in person in like very specific places. VDRs are very specific to counties. So like I'm a VDR in Travis County. If I wanted to register someone to vote in Hayes County, I can't do it. I have to go take their hour-long course in Hayes County to be able to register people there. Same with Williamson County. I think Williamson County is actually a little more difficult. Like you have to, I think it's like a longer meeting, or like there's more of a process to it. But every county is different as to how they qualify VDRs and how often they have their meetings to initiate new VDRs. And it's just, I mean, it's still like all paper stuff. Like it's just all paper forms. You're like writing stuff down. There's like a little paper receipt you hand to people when you're done. And then you, as a VDR, have to physically go to the office, to the, I believe the Secretary of State office, and hand those forms into someone. And then they have to sit and read those forms and type it into a computer. And that's how you get registered to vote in Texas. Like most states have online registration, or maybe not most, but a good amount have online registration. And so it just makes it so much easier and like less likely to make mistakes, because there's like 20 steps in that process that could be messed up. Oh, and also like as a VDR, like I have 3 days to turn in that form once it is like completed and signed. 3 days. And after 3 days, they won't take it. Like they're not supposed to. So there's just, they give you every opportunity to fail. and to like get people to register to vote. And you need to register to vote every single time you move. So if you're a renter like me, like if you're moving like every year or so, like I have to re-register every time. And so that just leaves this is like, I became a VDR because I realized how shitty it was to like go through this process. And I realized that like, damn, if I don't do it, like, I don't know who else will. Like it's a lot of responsibility. If I do things wrong, if I don't get someone's registration into them, like they have that little receipt with like my VDR number and my name. And so they can like use that to say, hey, like I'd never got my card. I think they signed me up wrong or they didn't turn in my form and I can go to jail. Like there's like a whole law. And like, if I do things wrong, like I could never be a VDR again. Like I could, it's a lot of pressure and there's a lot of ways to make mistakes. And it's not necessary. Like there's no reason it has to be that way. It's just done that way to make it harder for people to vote. Like it's that way on purpose, which is a common theme in Texas. Like the people in charge don't want everyone to vote. And that is like the simple truth of it. And like the VDR process, like the very first step in getting involved in politics makes that so clear.
Yeah, no, that's a lot. Yeah, I think that's something that like a lot of people who aren't into politics, aren't into activism miss. They don't realize another form of, things that are built into the system is this like form of voter suppression. And it is impressively sublime how they do that. It's like you almost have to tip your hat to them. It's like, wow, if you wanted to make a super subtle form of effective voter suppression, this is how you would do it.
Yes, it is like the most disgusting, complex, intricate spider web of bullshit.
We'll put that on the what do you call it? The urn of VDR requirements once we finally do away with all that.
I'm so ready.
Yeah, any like interesting stories from your VDR life?
I tend to go to a lot of music, like concerts and shows and just like parties and take like my VDR kit with me. Just because like those seem to be the people most likely to like need to re-register. Like a lot of like renters and young people are people who like just moved to Austin and stuff. So yeah, I've usually just like taken them to I have some friends in a band that's getting bigger in Austin, which is like very exciting. And I try to, every time I see they have a show in Austin, I'm like, do you want me to come VDR? Like, and they give me like a little shout out on stage. They're like, go register to vote. And it's like, it's very, very cool. Like those are my favorite places to register people to vote because one, I get into the show for free. Like I'm not gonna dispute, like that's a really cool perk.
Yeah.
But then like everyone who comes up to me is like so excited that like I'm there. They're like, I never would have expected to see someone doing this like at a concert, at a music show. And yeah, it's really cool. It also like, I don't like going to events or shows that like I don't have a purpose to do. You know, I'm a very like backstage or like behind the camera person. Like I like to have a purpose and a goal wherever I go. And so like the idea of like going to a concert and like standing in the crowd and just like, ooh, like I hate that. Like I can't do it. I'd rather be like circling the crowd and like getting shit done, but also like being around my friends and like having a good time. So yeah, if you're a VDR, I recommend like reaching out to like venues or bands and being like, hey, do you want me to set up a table? Because they love that stuff. It's really cool.
How many people at these shows, like, do you feel like there's a large, I don't know, percent of people there that are not registered, or like, is it a common thing? How many people do you get coming up to you like at a typical show?
Um, I would say I register about, and on average, like 10 to 15 people a show.
That
Um,
feels like a lot.
yeah, yeah. And yeah, it is a lot. And it's a lot of people who moved recently and like they're still
Yeah.
within the county, or they like moved into Austin. Like I mean, this number feels old, but I think there's something like 50 people moving to Austin every single day, or maybe 200. It's like way up there, like people who are moving to Austin every single day. And so it was a lot of people like that who were like, I just got into town, like this is so cool, thank you. Yeah, like there's a good amount of people there who.
And like, uh, just to get like a size or a sense of scope, like how big are these shows? Like 100 people, 200
um
people?
yeah, anywhere from like 100 people to 500 people. I think the biggest show I did a VDR at was Empire Control Room, and that was sold out. So whatever the capacity is for
No idea.
that, 800.
Okay. No, but still, like, I mean, that's like, we're talking like 2 to 10% of the crowd, which it seems like a lot, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah,
that's,
and I mean, it is like there's just a lot of people who need to register to vote, and yeah, especially in like people my age and younger, like a lot of them are sometimes like voting for the first time, and yeah,
yeah,
it's.
that's one of the things I think is so interesting because hopefully we can do like another episode on this later. I'm coming up with like episode ideas as we do our 0th episode. But there's like a whole thing about the voter file. So, I mean, you know about it, but for those that are watching, a lot of like political campaigns and even like the voter registration drives that happen are largely based off this either state voter file or national voter file that exists. And that file is also a contributor to like systemic kind of voter discrimination because you can imagine that if you are a white middle class homeowner, you've lived in the same place for the last 10, 20 years, your information in the voter file is going to be correct. And so um, if it ever changes or there's a candidate running in your area, they're going to have very good information to target you and get you involved. But if you don't fit into that category, the voter file has proven to be more inaccurate. So it's more inaccurate when it comes to younger people, people of color, people of lower income, because they tend to move around more. And it affects who ends up getting basically reached out to when it comes to political activity or even just voting in general, like GOTV reminders. Um, anyways, sorry, just
I do want to add that GOTV is get out the vote, because honestly, up until a month ago, I had no idea why
yeah.
everyone was saying go TV. I was like, what is get out the vote efforts? Yeah.
Yeah, if anyone has questions about things we're saying, just like you can post in the comments and we will respond to them. Okay, so you're doing VR work. You hear about Blue Squad. I think we've had this conversation, but tell me, like, what were your first thoughts? What were you thinking?
So I actually first heard about Blue Squad through Serena, who, yeah, was like kind of doing what I do for you guys at first. And I think I got like an invite to the launch party, which I wasn't able to make that day, but I was really bummed about it. Yeah, like that's what I would do in my free time, is like like read political articles, like go out and register people to vote, like just try to stay like informed and active and involved. So yeah, I was excited to like see there was like things happening, and especially in like the political world, because it just all feels so ancient, and like it needs, I think it is one of the industries that needs technology the most, and it needs good safe technology the most. It's yeah, so I was really excited to like kind of see it pop up in my circles and start making the rounds. And yeah, and then I was working at the Austin American Statesman before. If you don't know about it, it's the oldest newspaper in Texas. And it's something that I've grown up with, because I was born here in Austin, and I grew up nearby in Wimberley, and it's just always been like such a part of my life. Like even like driving down Congress and like going past the building,
Yeah.
it was such a cool
It looks
job.
like that building makes it look like an institution. I mean, it is an institution.
Yeah, yes. The building is huge.
You're gonna say it. You're gonna say something. You can say it.
I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say it. I really liked working at the Statesman, and it was for a long time like a dream job. I was there for about 2 years. I worked as a contractor for a little bit, and then they hired me full time as an experiential producer and an account manager in their marketing department. And yeah, my first couple of weeks in there were surreal and magical. Like it felt like I had like made it. And I started noticing that we, like everybody who was in there, took up maybe a 20th of the building. There
Mm.
was like this cafeteria that was empty. There was rooms where like there used to be like a gym. There, it was, the news industry has taken a really hard hit in the past few decades. And I would talk to people who had been there for decades, and they would say like it's not the same. Like subscriptions are down, like advertising in general is less effective, and so you're getting paid less. And honestly, like the subscribers are dying. Like the customers and the clients of these newspapers, like the ones who are paying up close to $1,000 a year to get a paper delivered to their door, are either like not subscribing anymore, or they're passing on. Like
Mm.
it's a really tough industry to be in. And honestly, it was sad. It felt like the golden age was over, and I was seeing the bones of what was left. And I mean, it's still a fantastic company, and like I met so many cool people there, and I learned like so much. We launched like a radio station while I was there. I was like helping out with that. I learned how to like make TV commercials and how to like schedule them. And, I was on the phone with New York and California, and I was like doing all of this cool like influencer marketing and all of these like events with like thousands of people. And it was so valuable to me. But it wasn't what I thought it was going to be in my head. It was a lot more corporate than I was used to, because up until this point, I had kind of worked in a lot of startups and technology companies. And so like all of a sudden it's like a complete 180, where it's like I'm working with like print media, which is like one of the slowest. I remember being like so blown away that like I had to get a print ad in to the hands of this like booker who would like, send it in through like this ancient computer system to go to another person who would lay it all out, to go to another person who would check it. And I had to like turn in this image to like a week in advance. And like as someone who is like working in like social media and app development, like that was just so foreign to me. It was like, well, why can't you like, that doesn't make any sense to me. But the printers need enough time to like work everything out. Like everything has to be like nailed down and perfect, like at least like a day in advance. Yeah, so it was a good experience, but it wasn't a good fit for me. That was a very long answer.
So you come into Blue Squad. Tell me what your kind of first impressions are. You should be honest. You should tell me.
Okay. My first impressions of Blue Squad was definitely excitement, because like it felt like such a good fit. Like I reached out to Serena actually, because she had gotten me my job at the Statesman. Like she's been my mentor in a lot of ways. And I reached out to her because I was like, hey, look, I don't feel like I'm using all of my powers at the Statesman. And I feel like I can do so much more. Let me know if you hear about anything. And she like immediately messaged me back, and she was like, I have the perfect job for you. She was like, I can't believe I didn't think of you earlier. She like apologized for like not thinking of me earlier. And she was like, okay, here it is. And she sent me the job listing, and I was reading through it, and I was like, oh, like, and all of us, like, I was reading it, and I was like, wait, did they, were they watching me do things and they like made this for me? I sent it to like 5 friends, and I was like, what do you think? And they literally asked me like, oh, did someone like make this job for you? And I was like, no, like they don't know me yet. It was honestly thrilling. Like from the moment I read the job description, I was like, this is everything I wanted. Like it was like stuff like attending events and protests, and like organizing people to like get more involved in politics, and like posting on social media, like doing marketing and bringing unity to communities. Oh, that rhymed. That was cool. Yeah. It was just like everything that I was already doing on my own, because like, I mean, as a VDR, I had, this group of friends, and I would like, I would text them and make sure they were registered to vote. And if they weren't, or if they're, they moved, they'd be like, hey, Amanda, can you like let's come hang out and like go get coffee, and like, you can register me to vote and stuff. And I would like remind them about elections, and kind of just like start getting like this group of my friends to like get more involved and active. So I was already doing all of this stuff. Like being active on social media, and like just speaking my mind, getting blocked by my uncles on Facebook, which is fine.
Like you're not really doing enough if you're not getting blocked by your uncles. So,
You really, honestly, like if you haven't been blocked by at least 2 uncles, like what are you doing for activism?
We should have this like a badge in the app. Like prove to us that you've been blocked by family members. You get a little badge for that.
Honestly,
I'm not actually saying you should get all up in the grills of your family members. It's a joke.
well, but really, if they're not for the cause, then you should. No, I mean, keep it reasonable, but yeah.
What were like?
I'd love to know, like, you had this like, or this like kind of framework or a way of going about things when it came to political activism, being a VDR, stuff like that. I'd like to think at Blue Squad, we're trying to push forward like a fairly different way of thinking about activism. That doesn't like, for example, doesn't require all like the work and training that a VDR might require. Right? Like that process should be easier. And we're trying to like sort of back solve how to make that easier. So what were your like first impressions? Did you get a sense for that, or, what's going through your mind like that first week, I guess?
Yeah, I joined and I checked out the app, and it looked like the very beginning of what it could be. Like it was definitely like pretty bare bones. I mean, I thought you guys had been around for a hot second. Like I didn't realize y'all had like launched the app like 2 months before I joined, which kind of yeah, honestly, like if I knew that, I maybe would have been like a little more, not suspicious, but a little more like wary of joining, because I looked at the app and like I looked at you guys and it seemed like y'all had been around for like, like at least had the app launched like for about a year. Just because of it, there was a substantial amount there. And like one of the jobs that I used to have, I was a salesperson for an app development firm. And so like, I kind of know what I'm talking about, and I kind of like know like the app world. And yeah, like joining and like seeing like, oh God, like they are brand new. I was a little bit nervous. And then like I started talking to people. I started talking to like Kate and Mo and Vince and Christina, and like seeing how y'all were like growing it. And like it would be like I'd be sitting there and y'all would say like, oh, like we should do this, like we should make this a feature. And I'd be sitting there like, okay, like let's add like 2 months or whatever. And then it would be done in like a day. Like it was that was astounding. And then it was like that moment when like I think y'all like just fixed a problem like on the fly, that I was like, oh, like, wait, they could like make this happen. Like they're not messing around here. Like I think like also like Mo like was like doing things at like 2 a.m., which is not like unheard of for like developers, but it was just like kind of, he was like endlessly working. He was, and also in a different country at the time. Yeah, it was.
There's another episode right there, Mo's journey from and back home.
Yes, I would love to know how that was, because yeah, that was also the first couple of months that I was there. Like the first 2 months, like Mo was just kind of, he was like, oh, our power went out again. Like we just had another like blackout. I'll be back.
Yeah. So again, for those, I feel like we're covered like so many things in this episode, but hopefully we'll go into this later. But like, yeah, one of our lead software developers was kind of in exile in Pakistan for a while. I'm half joking, but it felt like that. Yeah. So anyways, but yeah, so like, yeah, I mean, from my experience, like, I had been running another company for about 10 years, and Mo and Vince had joined, and Christina had joined from that team. And yeah, I was so ready to apply all the things that I had learned, mistakes I had made, to something better with Blue Squad. So that, I mean, that's cool that it felt that way, I guess.
Yeah. And that was also like a big reason why I decided to join Blue Squad is because, I mean, there's so many startups that fail, like, and you can be working for years and it still won't go anywhere. Like I've like seen and been around maybe like a couple hundred startups, and kind of seeing like who is successful and who isn't. Like basically when I first moved into Austin after college, in 2014, I started like getting involved in startups and being around them. And yeah, I feel like I kind of have a good sense of who's going to make it and who's going to succeed. And yeah, I mean, you had already succeeded, and so that made it easier, but I felt that same energy with Blue Squad, and that it was like your passion project really. And like, you don't necessarily have to do it, but you were still choosing to do it, was like one of the coolest things to me.
I mean, I guess I appreciate that. I don't know what else to say to that. So yeah, so like in your role as community manager at Blue Squad, so you're kind of tasked with engaging people who either already are activists or want to become activists, showing them how we can help them on that journey through our product. Now, so recently that has taken you probably farther than anything we've done before. The last week you've attended, I think you said 4 out of the 5 days of protest so far, around basically the protests around racism and police violence and all that. So yeah, I think let's dig into that. You had already done, if for those that like follow us on Instagram, you had been doing like a live feed of attending the first day and the second day, and then the one with APD kind of sort of put on, I guess. But talk us through that experience. What was it like? What were the logistics? What were you feeling during the time?
Yeah, so yeah, George Floyd was killed by police officers who had no reason to kill him, or even honestly like detain him. There was no reason for them to be there at all. And so there's been protests for a while. They started in was it Minneapolis where he was killed, and kind of spread out, and eventually they spread to Austin here this past Saturday. And yeah, I decided to attend. I mean, I love protests. It's just such a beautiful feeling to have such anger and sadness and like, what can I do? And then like go to a place where there are hundreds, if not thousands of people who feel the exact same way that you do, and kind of just like see each other and like know that like you're there for each other, and like this person isn't going to take this anymore. This person isn't going to take this anymore. And it's like, I always like get upset with people who are like, oh, protests don't mean anything. You're just standing there and shouting. That's not what it's about. It's about like coming together as a community and knowing that there are other people who feel the same way about it, and that you as a group, as a mass, aren't going to take it anymore. It's really, aside from like registering to vote, go ahead.
I was gonna say that I think for me, like I attended I think the first protest I attended was the Women's March, the first Women's March. And I think the thing that struck me from that is like, wow, like like you said, it felt like such a level of connection at such a scale that you just don't get anymore in like modern society. You know, we're also like isolated on a regular, I mean, obviously even more so now, but before coronavirus, we're all sort of isolated, digitally isolated. And when you go out to there, you suddenly realize like, yeah, I do belong to a community. There are other people that are like me. Mm-hmm. And you have your own individual beliefs, but there's this sort of fabric connecting all of you. And like that, it's hard to feel that at a deeper level than at a protest, I think.
Yes. I honestly, like every time I show up to a protest and, you know, there's like 100 people there, I cry a little bit at the beginning. Like there's just like this wave of emotion that like comes over me, and like a sense of relief almost, that like, thank God I'm not the only one. Like I'm here with people, like we're gonna be here for each other like right now. And it's just kind of like this like sense of peace and like release almost. I love protests, and I love people like standing up and like speaking for themselves and other people. It's one of the most powerful things. Oh wait, so yeah, the question. So yes, I went to the protests this weekend in Austin, and I went to the first one, which was, I kind of sent it out there in the world that I'm going to this thing, just to, you know, see if there's anyone I know who's also going, so we can meet up and say hi, you know, check in on each other. And I had people text message me and reach out and say, hey, I don't think you should go to that one. It's run by a group that's a little extremist, like on the left side, extremists on the left side, and like they've been the Mike Ramos Brigade. I'll say their name, fine. And like apparently like Mike Ramos's mom and like his family like condemned them for using violence in his name. And yeah, so I went with the knowledge that like, okay, this could potentially like get a little out of hand. They were meeting at the Austin Police Department headquarters, which is another like red flag. Like peaceful protests don't tend to start out like where the police officers like go every day. And yeah, so but I wanted to do it just because I knew there was another protest on Sunday that was run by some really great organizations, the Austin Justice Coalition and Black Lives Matter Austin. And I know that was intended to be peaceful and good. And yeah, I wanted to kind of like show people like, this is how you prepare for a protest. This is what it's going to look like. And yeah, just kind of like guide people to it who have maybe never been to a protest before and were nervous about going. So yeah, I started out the day with like packing a bag and like showing people like all the materials you should bring, like, you know, wake up and start drinking water, make sure your phone is charged, make sure your camera's charged, start charging an external battery or a couple external batteries if you have them. Wear like fairly tight fitting clothes with no brands on them. Like you don't want to, you know, have like represent something that maybe doesn't stand for what you're trying to be there for, or even be too noticeable in a crowd because you don't want to make yourself a target, especially in violent protests. Yeah, so I was just kind of like giving people a guide of like, this is how you prepare and this is what you should expect. And yeah, so I went to that first protest, and yeah, there was a lot of people there. It was nice. At the beginning, there was a lot of anger. There was a lot of like shouting and yelling, which I mean is fairly normal at protests. But one of the first things I noticed about this one was that there was no one speaker. Like they didn't get permits or anything. They didn't like set things up. Like there's usually like a speaker stand and like a panel of people who are going to like talk to the crowd. Like there's an organizer who is very clearly the organizer, and that wasn't the case at this one. So I show up, and Austin Police Department had already like closed down the frontage road of the highway. There was more and more people showing up just constantly. And at a certain point, this is when I realized like it might get out of hand. A group of people who were shouting at these officers. And by the way, these police officers were fully decked out, like just all of the gear, and kind of presented as like a shield to the crowd, not interacting with people, just stone-faced, terrifying, honestly. And people were just getting angrier and angrier because they were saying things like, what are you doing? Why did you do this? Like, what are you going to do to change things? They were trying to talk to these officers, and the officers were not listening at all. And so tensions were building very quickly. More and more people were showing up. A group branched off from the original group and went in front of the APD garage and like to block in the cars so they couldn't leave. And they started shaking the gate, and all of a sudden everyone shouts, look up, and you look up and there's like a row of police officers at the top of the garage with rubber bullets pointed at us, or the guns that had rubber bullets or beanbags or whatever they had at the time. And yeah, and so it just kind of escalated from there. As more people showed up, they started getting closer to the highway. All of a sudden, APD's on the highway. They closed down all of the lanes of the highway. This is despite protesters screaming at them, don't do that. Like there were people saying like, don't block the highway. They're gonna think it was us who did it. We're gonna, like, the movement is gonna be hurt because of that. Like we're not trying to get on the highway, and they did it anyways. So once they closed down the highway, then people kind of spilled onto it and were just like being a mass. And it went from about 200 people there to 1,000 in 30 minutes, maybe. Like it was a mind-blowing how quickly it grew. And then once people were on the highway, they, let us kind of like be around there for, about 10, 15 minutes. And then they started pushing us. They started walking forward as like just a line and pushing us south down the highway to clear it. And to do that, they started using, they didn't use tear gas at the time. They were just pushing us. They were just pushing us and having us walk. And so some organizers were like, we're going south, like we're going that way. So everyone started walking. And then the APD came around the other side of the highway to block us in. So all of a sudden there was just this mass of people stuck on the highway. And
You couldn't like even go, like you couldn't like go down into the frontage roads. You were like blocked because I guess there's guardrails and stuff.
yeah, so at a certain point, the 35 just becomes like a bridge, and you can't,
Right.
you have to like be near one of the exits to get off of the highway. And so like we were in between exits. And so yeah, we managed to like push past and like get to like the southern exit. And then APD was like coming forward from the south, and they started releasing tear gas at people and shooting rubber bullets. And actually I have this video clip I'll insert here of just a mass of people running at me. Like there was like shots and smoke, and like I look up and there's just people running at me. And so I like turned on my camera and like started shooting. And then I was like, oh God, like I got to get out of the way. Like, I don't know what's happening. And honestly, like that moment is going to be in my nightmares for the rest of my life. Like I haven't felt that helpless and terrified in a long time. And honestly, there was no real reason for it. Like these people, they were yelling, they were angry, they were upset, but they weren't violent. And eventually there were people who were throwing things like bottles or rocks. And those were not the protesters, though that group specifically was created by extremists. And so therefore there were extremists there. And as soon as people would see this happening, they would stop it. They would say, you can't do that, like calm down. It was, yeah. So I left pretty soon after that. I actually, I was walking with the group for a while, and they turned on Cesar Chavez, and then they were going to go down Congress to the Capitol. And as I was walking with the group in front of us was throwing flower pots and like very heavy things into the street, barricades to try to stop traffic on Cesar Chavez. And the group behind them that I was with was taking those off the road and trying to like clear the road and like make way, like let people go. And there was this woman there who was working to clean, she was part of like clean downtown streets or whatever. And I remember her just like looking at us like a whole, like I've got to clean this up. Like, what are y'all doing? Like, this isn't, the cops aren't going to come clean this up. Like, this is all on me. And so I started helping. I moved some flower pots, and these flower pots were not made to be moved. Like, they were a couple 100 pounds at least. So I'm like pushing these things across the road, trying to get them off. And at that point I was like, I gotta go. Like, I can't follow these people and try to clean up their mess. I'm already exhausted. It was like, I was an hour 2 at that point. And so as soon as I said, like, as soon as I thought like I am going home, I threw up. Like, it was like my body finally got a moment to like relax, and like it just like released itself.
All that emotion is just built up there and just coming out.
Yeah. And the adrenaline and just like the fear, like I thought there was a good chance that I would be shot. Like there was in my mind, like I had the feeling that like I'm not safe here. And I mean, I'm a mom, like my first priority is like my son. And so like, I'm going to these protests and I want to be involved and I want to do things for him, but I've got to come home to him. Like I'll get a little hurt. That's fine. But I can't risk my life. I can't. So yeah, I left before things escalated. I know that night there were some like broken windows and businesses that were broken into. I know that unfortunately, a homeless man's tent was put on fire. And that was caused by an anarchist. I want to be very clear, like that was not the protesters. That was not Black Lives Matter. That was someone who came to tear everything down. But it really escalated to a terrifying degree. And so the next morning, Sunday, I wake up, I start getting ready again. I'm, doing stories and I'm like, hey guys, like we're going to go again. Here we go. It's going to be peaceful. Don't worry. And an hour before the protest started, the event organizers canceled it because they said that they didn't think it would be safe for the Black community. It was no longer a place that would allow healing and conversation, because there were extremists from both sides who were planning on attending. So all of a sudden, I've got to tell everybody, look, it's canceled. I don't recommend you show up. I'm still going to go out there and do things. I added goggles to like my packing list just in case of pepper spray or tear gas. And I went out anyways. I was scared, honestly. Like I was excited at first because I was like, cool, peaceful protest now, easy. Like I don't have to do like that intense stuff again. And then when they canceled, I was like, I might be going into like a worse situation today. Like it might be worse. And I definitely felt a sense of responsibility in that, like, I want to show people what's going on. And like, like if I'm scared and I'm used to going to these and I'm used to doing this work, who is going to go, So I went out and I did it. Huh?
On that real quick, like what, like if someone's hearing this kind of like the first time, right? It's very scary. At the same time, we just talked about how protests can be very helpful and, like you just referred to, healing. I guess, what would you tell people that saw what happened over the weekend, over the past week? How do you help them be interested or okay with, like what's like going to, like, I don't know how to say, but a good protest, a productive protest?
I would say most protests are good and productive and safe. And even the one on Saturday and a little bit on Sunday where it was scary, there 99% of the people there, of the protesters, were good people who want to help others and are there to protect the Black community and are there to protect their friends. Like it felt like every fifth person was a volunteer medic. Like they had like high vis vests on and they had like a little like red cross that was made with tape, or there was like someone who was like handing out bottles of water. Even on the highway, they were handing out bottles of water to people. There were people checking in on each other. If someone started rubbing their eyes, there'd immediately be someone there saying, are you okay? Are you okay? Did something happen? If you sat down on the ground too quickly, someone would run over and be like, what's going on? Is everything okay? It was just, I was asked if I was okay, like at least 10 times. When the people were like, throwing stuff into the street, these, five men, there was like 30 people behind them writing things and fixing things. And it was just, there's always at protests, there are more good people than there are bad people. And I think that's really important to understand.
Okay.
Okay, so Sunday, I'm gonna try to make this one quick. So Sunday, it started out at the Capitol. I showed up. I actually I was supposed to go with a group of friends and like a group of 10, and only only two of them and me went, like because everyone was like a little too nervous, which is perfectly understandable. So we went down to the Capitol, and it was great. Like for the first hour and a half, it was just beautiful. Like it was all of these like Black voices being heard. Like people would make space for others and like let them speak and cry and scream and do whatever they wanted to do. There were women who were lighting sage, saging the police officers. There were women doing
As an Asian, I fully appreciate the sage burning.
yes. My grandmother is like kind of a bruja, and so like sage is like very much a part of our culture too. So it was like very cool to see that. I was like, yes, like my people. Yeah, there was people doing yoga. There was people who were they'd put their hands behind their back and lay on their stomachs in peaceful protest. At times the whole crowd would take a knee and just be silent together. Yeah, and there was the same thing. There was medics everywhere. There were people handing out snacks. There was people on the Sunday protest handing out goggles and like making sure, like especially like the ones at the front line who were like close to the front of the gate, they were like saying, hey, protect your eyes, like just in case.
What is making, so it's interesting because if it if Austin Justice Coalition had sort of kept their thing going, like it would have been one thing, but it was a canceled protest. People still came, yet it was still a completely different atmosphere than the one before, which was, they're anarchists, or I don't know what they're called, but that was still a group that was kind of spearheading that effort. Like, how is this sort of like, I don't know, free form protest so much more, um, so much more of a positive experience? What's causing that in your mind?
um, yeah, I think it's just that most people who were going out for a good reason, and that was to protect the Black community and make sure that everyone is safe from police brutality. Like the people who are showing up to protests like these are good, decent people who are not afraid to stand up for others. And so I think that like most of these people are just naturally leaders. Like that's the reason why they're out, is because they are willing to take charge and physically go out and help. Yeah, I love protesters.
I think for me that touches on a really interesting point in that when you're getting, like, if your first exposure to any sort of activism is a protest, or even going to like a local organizing event, I think I can recall like one of the first things I noticed was those people at the front of the room or the front of the crowd that are really galvanizing people. They're like, they give you like a flow to get into,
Mm-hmm.
that you're likely searching for up until that moment. And all of a sudden it's there. And it's like, okay, now I feel like I know what to do, which I don't know, I just think that's really cool.
Yes, yes. Yes, there's people who always like start the chants, and I don't know how they know what to chant. I don't know where these chants like originated from, but I love them, and I love that there's so many people who know them and know how to start them. And it's like that everywhere. It's just there's people who like have been doing this for a while, and so they know how to get others more involved. They know how to like draw in the people in the outskirts and like kind of come together like as almost a family out there. Like that's what it feels like. Like, it feels like just a big family. Like, okay, like we're all out here right now. We're all like fighting for the same thing. We're all going to say this at the same time. And like, I'm watching out for you. You're watching out for me. And we're going to like get through this together. We're going to be heard. We're going to be safe, and we're going to be loud. It's great.
Absolutely. So I know there's a couple more days that you attended the protests, but I want to hear what your thoughts are, and like, just based on what you saw. So you saw like the craziness that happened on Saturday. You saw the semi-impromptu positive experience on Sunday. You saw I know that you saw how I guess APD responded at another event. Why don't we like touch on that real quick?
Yeah. I do want to say, like, the Sunday event, it was good at the Capitol, and then the group moved to Austin Police Department again. I'm not exactly sure how that happened, but all of a sudden everyone was leaving to the police department, and it turned there. Like, they went back on the highway, this time without APD closing it down. Like, they just jumped on, and APD was a lot more militant in that. On that day, I saw like 50 officers on bikes just roll in. They sent out like the SWAT team. They were doing like U-shaped military formations, and they were a lot quicker with the tear gas. They had a helicopter circling that was just repeating the same thing over and over again, which was like, this is the APD, you need to get off the highway. And they repeated that like maybe 10 times. And then they like released the tear gas and rubber bullets. And Sunday was also the day where 3 people were critically injured by APD. I don't have the names on the top of my head, but it was a 16-year-old who was shot in the back of the head with a bean bag. And he was in critical condition for a while. There was a pregnant woman who was shot in the abdomen and the back, and she was afraid she lost her baby. Sorry, like that.
Yeah.
As a mom, like that just like is, oh, my worst nightmare. And she is okay, by the way. Like, as of right now, like, she had a checkup with her doctor, and her baby is fine. They have to have another one to be sure. Not like it's 100% okay, but that's like a minor miracle. And then there was a 20-year-old who was shot in the back of the head with, I believe, a beanbag or a rubber bullet, and he is still in critical condition. And they say if he wakes up, that he might not be able to tell his right from his left, which is like, so what will he be able to do? That's like the most basic, like, yeah, there was a lot of injuries that day after everyone got on the highway. And all 3 of these people were peacefully protesting. Like a pregnant woman, a 16-year-old, and a 20-year-old. Like, these were not, and there's video of this 16-year-old getting hit, and he's literally standing on a hill off of the highway and just standing there doing nothing, just standing there. And there's no one around him. It's just him. Yeah. And he just drops. He just like crumples like a little mosquito, and he's just down on the ground. And it is really hard. Actually, the 20-year-old, when he was shot, a whole bunch of medics ran over to help him, and then they quickly realized, like, this is way more than we can handle right now. And so they were communicating with APD to get him like to a hospital. And as they were bringing him up to the police department, those medics were shot at, which makes absolutely zero sense. And I'm blown away by it. There's videos of this. I don't want to put them up or anything, but it was really difficult. Austin Police Department really fucked up. They did. And I have friends who are volunteering as medics who are out there all night. They were tear gassed. Like there's a lot of responses of medics being hurt, which makes zero sense to me, because it's not like the Austin Police Department called emergency services and like had ambulances waiting for us. It was just us out there. Like they weren't. It was rough. So on Monday and Tuesday, I heard on Monday that like people, like things were different, and like the Austin Police Department was doing things differently. Like they switched their tactics overnight, basically.
Yeah.
And yeah, I checked it out and it was fine. Like it was very, very different energy. And I didn't stick around for long because I was like, okay, whatever. There's a couple people there. And then Tuesday, I had a friend reach out to me and say like, hey, I'm going to go to the protests and like see what's going on. And he messaged me that they were handing out cookies, which I didn't believe. I was like, I'm going to go check this out myself. And so I went down there, and yeah, they were, hold on.
You'll have the box.
Yo, I ate the cookies, which I'm honestly like really regretting, because it feels like blood cookies like in my stomach. Like I'm not.
Like, so I know that those are Tiff's Treats cookies. So anyone outside of, I guess, Austin or Texas they're kind of like a beloved local brand, right?
Yes.
And I know that Tiff's Treats, I think, actually donated them to APD. But I still got to say, it's like, I'm going to think twice about ordering the Tiff's Treats next time, honestly.
Yeah, I made sure to, I like posted on Blue Squad. I was like, guys, they're like actually like giving us cookies. Like, what is happening? And I had like someone ask me, like, ask them like where the money came from for those cookies. And I asked them, and they were like, oh, like they were donated, like Tiff's Treats donated 500 cookies to the Austin Police Department to hand out to protesters. And it was for what they called cookies in conversation. So like you show up, and all of a sudden like these officers are leaning over the fence, like, you know, sitting down, chilling out, like just being cool. Like, let's talk, guys. Very different from like the fully swatted out, like military
Weren't they
style.
still wearing all their, like a lot of them were still wearing all the equipment. Didn't you someone posted a video of like leaning over like this brick wall, talking to people, and the police officer is like still, maybe he didn't have his helmet on, but his other partners did. But he still had all the gear on. It's like a weird image, because like the police officer's leaning over the wall, fully decked out, but now he's having this like fun conversation with someone. I don't know if the person thought it was fun, but he seemed to be having a good time.
Yeah, they were still like geared up, but a lot of them had their helmets off. I mean, there were some of them like in the back, like I'd say about half of them were like more casual, and then the other half were like still like pretty serious. But yeah, they were talking with people. They were kind of scattered throughout the crowd. Like there would be one officer surrounded by like 5 people and having a conversation and answering questions. And, you know, people were angry, people were upset, and like asking them like why they were doing this stuff. And they were giving very honest answers. I stuck around for some of the conversations, and they made some really,
of the things you heard, like what were they saying?
Well, one interesting thing was this girl was talking about how someone was throwing water bottles or like throwing water at a police officer, and that officer like came at the person and like put him down, like was just really aggressive. And she was like, it was just water. Like, it was just water. I don't know why you would do that. And the officer said, oh, well, I can explain that. Like, when we see a bottle of water, we don't know what's in that bottle. Like, it could be gasoline, it could be acid. Like, we've had instances where someone is like using it to make a Molotov cocktail, And like, honestly, we don't want to get hit with it because we can't be positive that it's water. So I thought that was really cool. And I was like, okay, note to self, like, don't throw water at officers. Not that I would, but like, if I see someone doing that in the future, like, even though it might, I know like it's harmless and they know it's harmless, like the officers don't know that it's harmless. And I thought that was like a really good point that you made.
Sure. Yeah.
There was more, but I can't remember what the rest was. Yeah, so it was, yeah, they basically completely changed their tactics. They were handing out cookies, having conversations with people. And Tiff's Treats, actually, I told everybody, like, oh, like, Tiff's Treats donated cookies. Like, that's where they came from. And I had one friend who was very upset by this. Rightly so. I think we should be, because like, cookies do not make things right. They put 3 people in a hospital. Yeah. Like,
it would be one thing if like the past few days hadn't happened and they were like, let's have a community town hall out of the blue with cookies. Yeah, we're all for that. But not if you just erupted on us.
exactly. And yeah, I had a friend who was like tagging Tiff's Treats, and she was like, this is bullshit. Like, this is not okay. This is tone deaf. Like, read the room. And they actually messaged her directly. And yeah, they seem to be participating in active listening. Like, their responses were pretty good. Not perfect, I would say, because they were saying like, oh, like, the Austin Police Department reached out to us, and we talked to 2 organizers who were there at the protest, and they seemed to like the idea. They were trying to help pass out the cookies as well. But it's like, who was organizing that protest? Like, that wasn't an organized thing. Like, who are these 2 people that you talked to and approved it? Like, that they didn't talk to us, they didn't talk to the people who were being tear gassed and shot at. Like, they didn't do their homework. And they talked a lot about like intentions, like our intentions were good. Like, we didn't mean to make everybody feel like it was like a soft apology. But I think this is really important. Intentions are bullshit. Like, intentions don't mean anything if the outcome is not good. Like, and yeah, I'm so sick of people talking about intentions, because they don't mean anything. Oh, I didn't mean to. Whoops, sorry. Oops, that wasn't my intention. I think as a whole, we need to like put that word to rest.
Fair enough. No, I agree. I think hopefully like I know we're planning for our next episode to hopefully have a local Black community leader or someone like that. And I'd love to talk about that very issue with them. Sort of the history of intention. Maybe we can think about it that way.
I believe it's called performative allyship. Like, we did a thing, look at us. It's like kind of similar to like posting about, like, as a brand, like, oh, we care about Black lives. And then like you turn around and your actions mean completely different.
Yeah.
Performative allyship, I think, is like going to be one of our next big hurdles as a movement, just because it's going to be harder to figure out who's actually on our side and who's actually doing the work.
Right. Okay, man. So intense past week. So thank you so much for, well, we said bearing your soul. I think you did that. So thank you so much for that. I'll just say from my side, when I was obviously watching the live stuff on our accounts, and I feel like the hairs are going on the back of my neck, because I was like, this is so surreal to me. I had never expected, like, even a year ago, thinking like an employee of mine is basically risking her life right now. You probably would have gone regardless, but ostensibly for work, this is insane. but this is the world we live in now. So I think, like, for me, a lot of it has been the stuff we're living through now. We've read about in history books, or even in like our sort of cultural fiction, and we like to almost like fantasize about what would we do in those situations. And it's like a romantic thing. Mm-hmm. And then you get dealt the shit hand of having to live through that. And all of a sudden you're like, this really fucking sucks. And why did I think this was like, cool or like heroic in the past, because I would give anything to like be able to just walk outside and have a blissfully peaceful life right now. But we don't get that. We don't get that. We get to work for the next generation who gets to enjoy that. So anyway, so we've gone through so much, but this is kind of like the stuff. So for those listening, like, if you've listened to the whole thing, thank you so much. We've kind of intentionally made it so it's a long conversation. We expect future episodes to be similar in that vein. I think Amanda and I we listen to a lot of podcasts, and there's a ton of great stuff out there, but they often like are condensed and like feel like they always kind of like leave you wanting a little bit more. We want things to be a little off brand. We want people to like be honest about what they're feeling. So again, thank you, Amanda, so much for like setting the gold standard right off the bat, I think.
Oh man.
But sort of to tie it back to what we're trying to do with this show, with our company as a whole at Blue Squad, I've always had this idea. I guess it's been brewing in me for like the last 4 years, about the idea of what America should be and what America actually is. And like for me personally, on that fateful November 2016 night/morning, like that myth like completely shattered for me, right? And it like when I say that now, it feels, especially in the context of, I guess, Black America, it feels stupid to say that, because Black Americans have lived through that their whole lives, like knowing that reality. And I only woke up to that in November of 2016. But since then, I've kind of struggled to articulate that contrast between American myth and American reality. In this show, we're going to try and explore about that as much as possible through a variety of ways. And the funny thing was, I've been struggling to kind of put that contrast into words, like to express it. This idea that the country was built by a certain group of people who never actually believed in what we think of as the American ideal now. And the people they were actually kind of working against are the ones who are actually building that American ideal. And then so it happens, I actually, of all things, through this soccer podcast I listened to, the host brought up a poem by Langston Hughes that when I heard it was like, this is exactly it. And of course it's been written by a Black American. So I just want to like share it with the audience, whoever's listening, because I think it really sums up in such an elegant way what we are facing as a country now, what we're trying to do at Blue Squad, and what we want everyone to basically realize is the country and the society we live in right now and the work we have to do. So I won't do the whole thing. I just want to, I'll do the first couple of passages, and hopefully folks can find it in
read the rest because it's amazing. So it's called Let America Be America Again. Let America be America again. Let it be the dream it used to be. Let it be the pioneer on the plain, seeking a home where he himself is free. America never was America to me. Let America be the dream the dreamers dreamed. Let it be that great, strong land of love, where never kings connive nor tyrants scheme, that any man be crushed by one above. It never was America to me. So it goes on from there, of course, so everyone should read it. But I think that just, like I said, perfectly sums up what we're working with here. And that reality has been the reality for a large part of our fellow citizens. The rest of us, I think, have woken up to it recently, and hopefully more will still. But yeah, I think that's what we're going to be going through on this show. So hopefully folks continue to tune in and check it out. Our goal is to keep learning and hopefully helping everyone learn as well.
Amazing. Yeah. I want to end on one note that courage is being scared to death and going out there anyways. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't be afraid of anything, because it's not that scary once you're already out there and doing it.
All right, let's do it.
Let's go. See y'all out there.
See ya.